Is there a war on women? Welcome today, my guest once again. It's my beautiful friend Angela, and we're going to talk about what's happening in our world today where the freedom to be a woman is no longer guaranteed. And so we're going to watch a few clips and we're going to talk about how did we get here? How did we get here? So I'm going to share a clip for you. And, we are now living in a world as of last year when our Supreme Court justice could not define what a woman is. I mean, that was a very pivotal time in history. And honestly, I was speechless. And for months, I thought I could, we had the women's school. And prior to that, I never even thought that being a woman was sort of something that was vulnerable. Right? We've come so far as women, and all of a sudden we can no longer define what a woman is. So let's share this clip and let's just dig right in.
Here it goes.
Are women's sports under attack, but women in general are under attack. Science is under attack. Logic is under attack.
Misogynistic attack on not enabling and not understanding that people that are biologically female are as entitled to fair sport as people that are biologically male.
I think this has to be some sort of tipping point. For centuries, movements have fought for women's rights: the right to vote, the right to drive, the right to work, the right to be an equal citizen. But in 2023, the definition of being a woman is under attack. A new wave of society wants to break down genders and rewrite the definition of what it means to be a woman. In sports, in advertising, and mainstream pop culture, women are fighting back, protecting the rights that generations before them fought so hard for.
All right.
Jan, it's baffling that we're even having this conversation. It truly is. And I think that's what we have to just really acknowledge is the acceleration. Even 5 years ago, this conversation would be like, this is kind of silly.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing, like every day, there's, things are falling. Things that have been obvious, taken for granted for millennia are now being questioned. And it's time to say, stop. The emperor has no clothes on. This is ridiculous.
This is ridiculous. I do think that people are starting to wake up. And I think women's sports, and you're an athlete, you can speak more about that. But I'm kind of fascinated. To me, I'm like, how did we get here as a nation? How did we convince women in leadership that it was okay to rob women of their freedom to be a woman after 100 years of fighting for our voice and not even having our voice, completely in every sort of facet of society? All of a sudden, my daughters could play with male athletes. Like, where's the logic behind this? And, so much of what we teach in the school is how to actually think critically, based on evidence, based on natural law, based on what is really common sense, no longer common practice. So there's a lot of, I think, backlash that's happening because people are waking up to the fact that this is so ludicrous. It's beyond ludicrous. Like your daughter going to a bathroom next to a man, Angela. Can you tell me that does not give you a visceral
I have
reaction?
Two daughters, and let's just say that 15 years, they're heading off to college and they get their roommate, and their roommate's actually a biological male, but he identifies as a woman. Do I want my daughter? What are we setting ourselves up here for? And again, as an athlete, I'm very strong for a woman. I always have been, but compared to the weakest man, I'm nothing, we are biologically different and gloriously so. So I think we need to recognize here how profoundly we're being robbed, that what it is to be a woman, what makes us so profoundly unique and complementary is just being erased.
And, they're trying to put forth legislation that eradicates the word mother And I remember hearing this, maybe it was a year ago, and I thought that's insane. It could never. And I'm like, oh, wow. Now you could actually get in trouble and go to prison in Michigan for using the wrong pronoun. And to me, I'm like, you know, the solution to me is we have to equip men and women to actually bring reverence back to who they are, because we're not going to be able to this ideologies if we're not equipped to, first of all, equip our children to be, strong and resilient against these ideologies that are seeping through our institutions and our school system, then they're inevitably going to be a victim, whether they like it or not.
And it's going to be a direct attack against the very essence of their being. And the fact that they're having to answer, I was in dialogue with a dear friend yesterday, who's in the Midwest. One would think that, in a relatively small town community, and, their third graders are being challenged on which pronouns they're going to be using. And really the only person that gets to use a third party pronoun is God. He said he made man in our image and our likeness. He's the only one that gets to do that. And if we're trying to change our pronouns, then we're trying to play God. And I think we need to acknowledge that.
Yeah, that's actually, I never thought about that, but hence, I mean, it's no shock to me. We've taken God out of our institutions, our school system. Now we're taking man and women out of our institutions. And so that's really what the vision here for us in our school is. We have to equip the woman, because right now women are so vulnerable. And it's, I think, first of all, we need to figure out what's happening. Why are a lot of, why is there a rise in transgender that was not there before? And you hear all the, kind of the, I would say, evidence that maybe before they were never allowed to. Well,
no, there's an agenda.
Yeah. The argument behind it is that, people were not allowed to be left-handed. There was not a rise of left-handed people after they were allowed to be left-handed. And it was Bill Maher actually that said, it's interesting to me that California has more transgender family children than actually, Tennessee. Is it a geographic thing? It sort of proves a point of, or is it that certain states are promoting something? And to me, what I'm seeing so many of these people is that they're becoming a victim at a very young age to a very sinister agenda to dehumanize them, because that's what it is. I mean, to mutilate a child who is incapable yet of making a decision. Our frontal lobe is not fully developed until we're 25. We don't even let somebody drive till 18. Now we're mutilating them at 12 or 13. I mean, the hope that I'm seeing right now are actually, children that were mutilized and manipulated into it and actually are speaking up and say, I could never have a baby right now.
They're dealing with, the suicide. There's some hospitals that are no longer, major institutions that are no longer doing these surgeries or transitional procedures because the suicide rate is so high. The level of regret, the health complications are devastating. And the even deeper ache is literally days after having these surgeries and these going to these, there's no research even to back up the ramifications of what we're subjecting our young people to. And without really their freedom of choice, because I believe that they're incapable of having a freedom of choice at these young ages, we are rendering them sterile. We're rendering them, we're literally creating eunuchs. This is a direct attack against marriage and the family in future generations.
Yeah. And I think right now mothers need to be very vigilant, equipped, very strategic, because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And you have to know how to actually lead with strength, because a lot of our youth are being trained in our school system and institutions, and they're seeing in social media to lead with their emotion. And I've even been sort of reflecting on this idea of this idea of parenting where you're like, well, whatever feels right for you, right? It's sort of this idea where we're no longer creating healthy discipline and boundaries. Like you're in Montessori, so there's boundaries, there's discipline. And if we are raising children who are they're always noticing about how they feel, which is good, but never aligning it with how do I feel, but what's right here?
Right.
right? What's right? What's, and I'm even, thinking about the way I talk to my children. I'm like, actually, you just have to have to sacrifice that right now. It's going to hurt. And that's just life. I can't protect you from the pain. I'm sorry. I want to, but I can't. So it really is good to cry it out. But I am not going to be here to soothe you, because you've got to find out how to pick yourself up. Because I think that's what's even happening is there is this massive rise of transgender that I feel like maybe mothers were ill-equipped to hold firm boundaries, to hold the line, to actually think with their children and say, well, no, actually, let's think through this.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes children who, or parent or moms that are nice or good, but they let their children run over them.
Right.
Jordan Peterson actually talks about this, the importance of not allowing your children to do that.
And we actually need parents to be parents.
Yes, that's what
Children,
it is.
I've people that I've been blessed to accompany that will say, listen, I had a great childhood in a sense, but upon reflection, I was more in the parental role than my parent was. And that's taking, work into their 20s and 30s to restore that and to heal from those wounds. We know that children do better when they, it leaves a profound effect to know mom and dad want me to be home by 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Having that boundary means I'm loved and I'm cared for.
You're wanted here.
We're wanted here. We care about your well-being. That just be home whenever it feels good. Yeah. So actually we need, and that's part of helping, we're not raising children, we're raising adults, we're raising mature adults. And part of that maturing process is giving them a standard, is giving them a way of life so that when they are ready to be launched, hopefully as, trust is earned, more freedom can be given, but that they'll be able to make good choices based upon a right way of living. And that's what is, right? There is a right way to live.
Yeah. That's, and I think that they can't then execute and regulate their own boundary if it's never been exercised. So if I've never given my child a boundary or say, you need to be home by 10, the time matters, it's 10:01 is late, then how can they police themselves so that they don't go by their own emotion?
Right.
So circling back on how, the definition of women, if we live in a culture where whatever goes, however feels like, whatever floats your boat, then now we are sort of bringing kind of a culmination of all of these based on your feelings, whatever you think, whatever you feel is right. Now we can no longer define what a woman is. I mean, that's sort of kind of what led us here to saying, hey, whatever's right for you, whatever feels right for you.
And then just a fear of speaking out, a fear of offending. And I think that's really clear too, is we want to have profound empathy. We want to understand people's journey and their story. But this is a very unique time in that the small minority are dictating to the 98%.
Yeah. Yeah. Along with a few.
We're having to change everything in a dramatic way to appease the 2% or the 3% or whatever that percentage might be. That's very unique right now.
Yeah. And what part of that is even part of mental illness? Like we have to kind of even question, like in Virginia, there's some, well, first of all, my niece was going to school in Virginia and they had to pull out because there was somebody that was a transgender who actually sexually assaulted another girl. So they had to pull out. It was a safety issue, but then they were in the process of trying to see if they should have a litter in the bathroom for a girl who identified as a cat. I mean, where does it end, Ange?
Well, it doesn't. Why can't I be a cat or a dog? And we're seeing that. We're seeing people. I mean, let's go back and watch Hunger Games, right? People in there had put in whiskers. They'd had, in the movie and in the books, people had literally had plastic surgery to have the face shaped like a cat. We're seeing this. This is the evolution of how things can go. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And but we also have to remember what's so painful here is understanding that we're also there's a profound misunderstanding of what it is to be a woman, in the sense that just because, like for a man, if he likes gardening or he likes to cook, does that make him a woman? Yeah. Absolutely not. The best chefs in the world are men, some of the best chefs, the best artists, the best actors, right? So we have to understand that just because someone as a woman, I liked more sports than I like playing with dolls when I was little. Does that make me actually a boy? No. Those are just interests. That does not define the core essence of what it is to be a man or woman based upon interests or things that we gravitate towards. So I think even that scope of interests or inclinations also is different from the very essence of our biology.
Yes. And like my beau thought he was a monkey for a whole year. I mean, he would walk like a monkey because he loved watching monkeys. I mean, these children do that. Their imagination is going wild.
Absolutely.
And so what do? We're like, sometimes I just think it's the parents
Right.
who have never emotionally grown up,
Right.
who've never given themselves actually a sense of self-worth. And that's what I kind of go back to, Ange, is that right now, women don't know their value. So they're living to prove who they are, but so are men. So now if it means I'm more accepted, if I was X, Y, and Z, then I'll change myself, whatever it takes so I can be more accepted. It's a cry for acceptance. It's a cry for belonging.
Absolutely. Because I mean, we all need accompaniment. We all need companionship. We all want to have someone bear witness to our life. You know, it's not good for man to be alone. We're made for communion. We're made for intimacy. And we need to understand that, there's a cry for friendship. I think because of a lack of skills, so many people today have never experienced authentic, nurturing friendship.
That's a great podcast. We should do that.
Right. And so we need to understand, what are these deep human drives and our deep human needs? And as you said, so much of this conversation on a global level right now is a cry for help.
It's a cry for help. And I think that's where the heart of women can then enter in, because, there's a small minority of women who are pushing in this idea that we can't define what a woman, but I believe the silent majority of women are saying, no, I'm a woman. Only women can have periods, and only women can have, if you don't have a uterus, you can't have a baby. And the confusion is what's confusing our children. That's now raising a new, generation of women of children that are becoming adults that are confused. But we have to actually stand and hold the ground. We have to stand our ground.
Yes.
And push back. It's now or never. Otherwise, more of this generation is going to be more confused, and it's going to be a massive. We right now, our generation, you're 20, 30, 40, 50. Now, this is a call for our time, and saying, listen, the feminist movement have given us a gift of freedom. They've given us the gift to be able to vote, to be able to choose, to be able to own properties. Let's not squander that and hand it right back, because they died for that freedom. I mean, emotionally died. They fought for it, mentally, physically. Even if you don't agree with some of those things that, that they did, we have to honor the fact that we now have freedom that no longer is guaranteed now. Right. We literally are going backwards.
Right. Freedom is not free. And again, we have to remember here too, that, it's always been the complementarity of the sexes that leads to a flourishing society. Marriage between a man and a woman have always been the bedrock of civilization. And I believe, and history has backed up, are the place where children can thrive. Now, do we have a, litany of poor examples of marriage and suffering? 100%, but that doesn't mean we give up the ideal.
Yes. And I think that now is the time for, I would say, women to say, we need to speak up. We need to speak up in our institutions. We need to speak up into our school, a school board. We need to speak up in politics. Like, we can't afford to be silent anymore. And more than ever, this is where we need to strengthen the woman. Because right now, the idea of what a strong woman is, I think, is diluted and convoluted. We don't even know what a strong woman is. It's based sometimes on success and achievement rather than sort of the interior command of the woman's soul. And so what we need right now is an army of women that says, I'm going to strengthen my mind. I'm going to strengthen my body, my spirit, physically, mentally, emotionally, so that I can actually fight this battle in front of me and defend the value of women. That is what we need. That is a call for this time in history, is to defend the value of women.
Absolutely. And to do it, again, with joy and freedom and peace. I mean, a woman who is at home in her body, a woman who knows who she is, a woman who radiates joy and peace is baffling.
It's baffling. Yeah.
She will baffle those around her. She will inspire, she will encourage, she will nurture by her very presence. And it will literally cease to be a conversation. You know, if women just are able to step into their call and find their voice, and this battle can be literally won with love.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's what it is the back to the reverence of what it means to be a woman is what I think is what's could be a beautiful invitation. Because what we're seeing is that, you know, as a byproduct of women wanting to be men, as you know, in the name of my freedom, my, you know, fighting sort of this patriarchy, is that women are essentially wanting to be men, but what happened is that they can't. And so what I'm seeing is that you've got anger and resentment
And bitterness.
radical bitterness, radical, angry, you know, women who have sort of been sold in this feminist agenda, who's saying men are bad, women's power and women only, and women is the future. There's no men. Also directly emasculating men to, I think, at a cost of their own frustration and anger, because the reality is that we need each other. And I think there's a hurt there, maybe from a wound, from a frustration, from an experience that's never healed. And now it's like, no, I don't need men. But they're hurting inside, and it's coming off as angry, and it's coming off resentful and bitter. And you can honestly experience it too. You can experience it. You can feel the anger and the bitterness and the unhappiness. And also you can probably even think of the different parts of their life and how that's created a negative ripple impact in their children, in their marriages, and even in their businesses. Sure, they could achieve success, but their marriages are falling apart. I mean, to me, like I think of Hillary Clinton, which you know, she's achieved great things, and this isn't a judgment towards her, but it goes back to that our lives need to be integrated, right? And that your not just your achievement, but your relationship, your intimate relationship, you know, with your husband, in that, you know, we don't know what happened, the whole situation, and I'm sure there could be healing and from the adultery, but you know, you have to look at the whole woman. And I think that's what we want to do, is start to honor the value of the whole woman and not just parts of her.
That's it. And when women truly come to know the depth of their worth and their dignity and begin that healing journey and that restoration journey, it actually, again, also enables men to be who they were created to be.
Yeah.
And so we have a tremendous amount of healing as a culture, as a human family to undergo, because women's dignity has not been honored. And again, there's been a hyper swing, I think, in the opposite direction, to totally degrade men, that men are the enemy, right? But we all need healing. We all need restoration. We all need to heal from these generational wounds. And now is our time.
Now is our time.
We have an opportunity to choose life.
And now is our time to defend the value of women, so we can bring life back into the world. And that's the call of the Women's School. And so if you're listening here and this resonates with you, learn more about the Women's School and what we offer and how we train women's mindset and skill set to raise the standards of every part of their life. So Angela, thank you so much for this conversation. We're going to continue to talk about some of these issues that are not always so pleasant, but necessary for such a time in history. So thank you, Ange.